welcome friends. Up till now, we have discussed poverty, and before moving on to unemployment, which is the next topic, I thought it fit to discuss economic inequality also, because many a times the problems of poverty, the problem of the issue of poverty does not express itself alone. You also find a lot of economic inequality in a society in which there are lots of poor, and that is why I thought it fit to discuss income inequality or the economic inequality also. So let us discuss economic inequality. What do we mean by this? Unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups in a society. So some groups are earning a lot, the others are earning much less. Some others have opportunities to further augment their income, the others don't have any such opportunity. They are even struggling to survive and to have two quarter meals a day. So this is what we mean by economic inequality. You can understand when this happens, what would be the impact. Naturally, those who are poor and those who are not able to even feed themselves, those who are at the lowest strata of the society in terms of income, they would have no other option but to indulge in crime. And naturally, such societies will have a very high crime rate. On the other hand, they would also not be very satisfied with the governance of the country, and they may express their anger and discontentment against this kind of governance, and there might be political instability also. In fact, if you look at India and you look at the areas which are most affected by the Maoist issues, which are most affected by the Maoist menace, which are infested by the Maoist insurgents, they are the areas where there is a lot of income inequality, and while the richer sections of the society are exploiting the natural resources of those areas and they are growing richer by the day, the poorer sections of the society, they are simply not able to partake in the profits of exploitation of natural resources. They are simply not getting anything from the use of resources which actually belong to themselves only, and that is why there is a lot of dissatisfaction among people there, because of which some of them have turned to Maoism. Some of them have now turned to Maoist insurgencies. So whenever there is a lot of income inequality in a particular society, it may lead to political stability also. There have been cases in some of the countries in recent times when the rise in inflation and the lack of jobs has led the poorer section of the society to rise up in arms against the incumbent government. So if there is income inequality in a particular society, there is going to be a lot of political instability also. In this sense, income inequality is not good for a country. Now, how do we measure the income inequality in a particular society? We are not going to get into the basics, but we should understand that there is a gross inequality index, which is also called the Gini index. Gini is basically the short form of the gross inequality index. So in this gross inequality index, there is a particular methodology which we'll have to adopt, and once we have adopted this methodology, we'll arrive at a particular score which is called the Gini coefficient. If this score is 0, this shows that there is perfect equality. There is no unequal distribution of income in the society. So in that sense, the distribution of income is almost equal. So there is perfect equality when the value of Gini coefficient is 0, and when the value of Gini coefficient is 1, there is perfect inequality in the society. So if you look at the Gini index, you would find that the more the coefficient value tends towards 0, the more equal the society in terms of the income distribution, and the more it tends towards 1, the more unequal is the society in terms of the income distribution, right? And so society would want to have a score which is nearer to 0. Now let us talk specifically about the case of India. You will find that in India, the richest 1% own 58% of the overall wealth. Now that was a research which was undertaken in the year 2016. So these figures are a little outdated, but you should not expect the values to change by a big margin. And if you talk about the richest 10%, the 10% richest people in India, they own 80% of the wealth. What does this mean? The ones who are poorer than the richest 10%, which means the remaining 90% of the population just owns the remaining 20% of wealth. So this is the kind of income inequality in the country, which is naturally not good, and it is causing headaches to our policymakers and academicians. The Gini coefficient, according to the Central Board of Direct Taxes, now they've got their own methodology. They look at the tax filings and tax returns, and based on that they calculate the Gini coefficient. So if you go by that methodology, because there are so many other agencies also, so many independent agencies, so many government agencies, so many research firms who try and calculate, try and measure the income inequality. But if you look at the CBDT figures, Central Board of Direct Taxes, you would find out that in 2013 our Gini coefficient, Gini index was 48. It rose to 63 in 2016. So these are figures for 2016 basically, which means there was an increase or decrease in inequality. There was an increase in inequality, and the income equality became more pronounced in the Indian society, naturally not good for India as a country. Now that we have had a brief discussion on economic inequality, we will now go for unemployment. But before that, you should understand that government is coming up with so many initiatives to reduce this income inequality. I'll just give you one or two examples. For example, if you look at the income tax rates in India, the more you earn, the greater percentage of your income would be taxed. Or let's say the greater percentage of your income you would have to pay as tax. Now this is called progressive taxation, because we are taxing the richer more and we are taxing the poorer sections less. In fact, the ones who are earning less than 2,50,000, they don't have to pay any tax. So why is this government doing this? So that the richer can be taxed more, and ultimately the income inequality in the society can be reduced. Right? Likewise, the government provides subsidies to the poorer sections of the society, while it does not provide such subsidies to the richer sections of the society. The reason is this again: we are trying to create a society where there is income inequality, where there is economic equality, and the standard of living becomes almost similar. Okay, this is something that is a very nearly impossible kind of a dream, but then the government is aspiring to ensure that there is as much equality in the society, as much income equality or economic equality in the society as possible. Now let us move over to unemployment. Unemployment, I think, is a big issue which should concern you, because naturally in the next 2-3 years you would be entering the job market, and would be those of you who are not planning to have run their own businesses, they would be entering the job market and they would start looking for jobs, and that is why this particular topic should be of great interest to you. Now unemployment, we have got different definitions for who is unemployed, who is underemployed, and who is employed. So let us have a look at these definitions. If you talk about workers, who is a worker? And we are talking not from the point of view of English, we are talking from the perspective of economics. What do we mean by a worker in economics? What do we mean by unemployment in economics? And you would find a worker is one who is engaged in economic activities which contribute to the GDP of a country. And that is why I am diverting a little bit here. That is why the mothers, your mothers who do the household work, or maybe the sisters, generally this is what happens in our society. The female folks, they work in the house and they perform all the household duties. Since that is the worth of the work that they do, the household work that they perform, that is not taken into account while calculating the GDP of our country. This is the reason why these women folks, they would not be considered workers also, because they are Yes, they are doing a lot. They are actually doing a very they are performing a lot of functions, they are doing a lot of duties, but then since their output would not be considered while calculating the GDP of a country, that is why they would not be considered from the economic point of view. From the economy point of view, they would not be considered workers. So I'm just giving an example. On the other hand, if there is a rickshaw puller who is uh, toiling throughout the day, and he's providing transportation services, this would be taken into account while measuring the GDP of the country, and that is why we can say that rickshaw puller is basically a worker. Now let us talk about full employment. What do we mean by full employment? Whosoever is willing to work at a particular wage rate. It's not as if the person is willing, it's not as if the person is being paid anything. No, if he is willing to work at a particular wage rate and he actually gets employment as per his skill set, then he would be considered a fully employed individual, and this would be considered full employment. So whosoever wants to work at the particular prevailing prevailing wage rate, so at a particular wage rate, if the individuals are ready to work, and they are also being able to work, the work is being provided to them as per their skill set, then this would be considered full employment. This generally does not happen. Many individuals in a particular economy, generally they don't get the work which is according to their skill set, and then the economy would not be considered operating at full employment levels. For example, in India, you would find so many degree holders working as peons. So this is a work which is not up according to the skill set of that degree holder, of that graduation degree holder or PG degree holder. So this would not be considered full employment. Now let us have a look at what is underemployment. Now, before unemployment, there is underemployment. In layman terms, you can say partially employed. So unemployment is when you simply do not have any job, while underemployment is you have a job, but it's not a full-time job, so you're not engaged throughout the day as you would have liked. So this is what underemployment is. People working less than they are willing to work. So these are the people who are working less than what they are willing to work. So for example, there might be people who are willing to work for 10 hours in a day, but because of, let's say, the COVID-19 crisis, the industries are not able to run throughout the day. They are not running in 2 to 3 shifts. So the individuals, they are being asked to work only for 4 to 5 hours. Then this is called underemployment. So people are getting work, but the quantum of work is much less than what they desire, what they will to perform, and that is why it would be a situation called underemployment. Now what will be unemployment? People seeking jobs, they are not getting any work due to lack of jobs. So they are unable to work. While here they are getting some work, but the work is less than what they want, less than their capacity to perform, their capacity, their willingness to do work. So the work which is available to them here is less than what they can perform. Here the work is not at all available. So unable to work because there is no job, there are no jobs. In this case, it would be called unemployment. Please understand the difference between unemployment and unemployment. On the other hand, if every person who is willing to work at a particular wage rate is having the opportunity to work, is employed as per his skill set, then it is called full employment. So an economy can pass through all the 3 stages. It can be at the full employment level, which is generally not observed. Then it could be at the underemployment and the unemployment level also, right? Now let us talk about the various types of unemployment which are there. The first one is called the functional unemployment. Now this is temporary in nature, and what do we mean by functional unemployment? When one is looking for another job or upgrading his skills. I'll give you an example. So for example, you have joined a particular organization after completing your graduation, and then you worked there for 3 years, and now you are planning to go for your MBA. So you'll have to resign from your job duties, and then for the next 2 years you'll be pursuing your MBA. So this is an example of functional unemployment. You are unemployed not because the work is not available. You are unemployed because you are upgrading your skills, or you are unemployed because you are looking for another job, right? So you have left your job and you are looking for maybe another job. You have got selected another job, but the joining is, let's say, 3 months down the line. So in this 3 months period, when you have resigned from your earlier job and you are still looking for the other job, you have not joined the other organization, you are basically contributing to functional unemployment. Now this kind of unemployment would be called functional unemployment, and this is temporary. Once you do your MBA, you get into a job, so this is temporary in nature. Then we've got structural unemployment. What do we mean by this? Mismatch between skill sets that are available with the worker and that is required by the employer industry. So what the worker is offering, the skills being offered by the workers are of no use for the industries. They want a different kind of skill set which the worker is not able to offer to them, which the worker does not have. In this case, the worker would remain unemployed, and this would be called structural unemployment, right? Now we'll have taken up the example of farmers who migrate to industrial sector. So they know about the farming practices, they know about cultivating the crops and tending to the fields, but they do not know, they are not skilled enough, they do not have the skill to work in a manufacturing industry or a service industry, or maybe work with a particular tool. They are not skilled in that sense, and that is why they would contribute to structural unemployment, because what skills they have, that is not required. Those skills are not required by the employer industries, while they simply don't have the skills which are required by them. So the unemployment caused due to this is structural unemployment, and this is a feature of a developing economy. This is very, very common in developing economy. What could be the reason? See, in developing economy, there would be rapid change in the technology. Developing economy would have industries, would have firms which would keep on upgrading to better technologies, upgrading to more efficient machinery, more efficient work methods. And when this happens, a particular firm has upgraded to new technology. The ones who are working at the older technology, they may, for a temporary period of time, they would not be able to work on the newer technology. And this would be structural unemployment, right? So in developing economy, technologies change very fast, and because of which there is a lag between when the technology has changed, when the technology has been upgraded, and when the workers have acquired the skill to work with that technology. So that time lag is there, right? During that particular time lag, that worker is of no use for the particular firm because he does not know the upgraded technology. He is not well versed with the upgraded technology. In other words, his skills have become outdated. Skill obsolescence. Skills becoming outdated. So his skills has become outdated in the meanwhile. So he is actually contributing to structural unemployment, which means that again this is going to be temporary. If he upgrades his skill and he now acquires the skill to work with the new technology or the new platform or the new work methods, then he will be ready for employment again. So this is again very temporary in nature, and this is a feature of a developing economy. A little bit of structural unemployment is not bad because it is bound to be there in a developing economy, right? And the natural rate of unemployment is basically the functional unemployment plus the structural unemployment, and it should be around 2 to 3%. So this is the natural rate of unemployment. Of all the people who are seeking jobs, 2 to 3% remain unemployed. Why? Because either they are functionally unemployed, which means they are upgrading their skills or looking for a better job, or there is structural unemployment, which means their skills don't match the requirements of the employers. So there's a vacancy in the employer organization, but they are simply not suitable for that vacancy because they don't have that kind of skill set, and they will have to upgrade their skill set before applying for the job in a particular organization. So this is very, very natural in a growing developing economy, 2 to 3%. So if the level of unemployment is 2 to 3% in economy, you should not be worried because that is perfectly acceptable. Now let us talk about the other types. Cyclic unemployment, cyclical. I hope you remember your the topics that you have studied in macroeconomics, where you discussed about the business cycles and the trade cycles, and there we talked about the recession and the depression phase. The world is slowly hurtling towards a recessionary phase because of the COVID-19 and lockdown in almost all the major economies since February or March. So now a recessionary stage is setting in, and the worst form of the recessionary stage is the depression stage or the depression phase. Again, naturally in the recessionary stage, what will happen? Industries would slowly close down, the demand would decrease, which means the production will have to be decreased, people will have to be terminated, employees will have to be asked to leave. The demand is decreasing, and since the demand is decreasing, the prices would also decrease, and this is a characteristic of the recessionary phase, right? Naturally the jobs would be lost, there would be people who would be rendered unemployed, and if you look at the newspaper items, you would find that so many people have lost their jobs or are likely to lose their jobs in the next few months just because of the COVID-19 crisis and the closure of various industries. Now this is an example of cyclical unemployment. It is associated with business cycles, and cyclical unemployment would be seen in the recessionary and the depression phase, not in the recovery or the prosperity phase, because that is a time when there is a lot of employment, a lot of demand is there, so a lot of production has to be done, and naturally there would be more number of people who would be employed, right? Now let us talk about the seasonal unemployment. Now unemployment which depends on the season, which is specific to a particular season, which happens because of the change in season, is called seasonal unemployment. If you talk about, let's say, the farming community in India, you would find that they don't have any work to do in particular months of the year when, let's say, the seeds have been sown. So you simply do not have anything to do until the crops grow up and they are to be harvested. So in that particular interim time, you simply do not have anything to do. So this is such seasonal unemployment, inadequate availability of work in certain seasons, in certain parts of the year, right? So this is inadequate availability of work in certain seasons is seasonal unemployment. I'll give you an example. During the Shraddh Paksh here in India, which precedes the Shardi Navrats, which take place somewhere around October, November, right? During that time, there is less purchase in most markets of the country. Why? Because of religious sentiments associated to the 14-day period. Now, if because of that, some of the workers are rendered unemployed for the 14 days or 20 days, just because there is going to be no demand in the market during those 14 days. Let's talk of a roadside eatery shop, and who is selling non-veg items. For these 14 days, he would be rendered unemployed because people would simply not turn up to have his delicacies, to have the food in his stall. So that could be termed as seasonal unemployment, which basically is specific to a particular season because of no availability of work during that particular season, right? I've quoted the example of the agriculture work. In some part of the year, there is simply nothing which can be done, and there is simply no job to be performed in the fields, and that is the time when the farmers are seasonally unemployed, and that is why government has come up with MNREGS. During that period of time, when the farmer is free, he can enroll himself into Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme and can avail the job which is guaranteed by the scheme. He can perform that job and get paid in return. So this way he would be able to augment his income during his free time, during that part of the year when he is free. He does not have any job to perform in his fields, right? So this is basically what seasonal unemployment is. Now let's talk about disguised or hidden unemployment. You can have a look here in the photograph. Don't you think in this particular photograph, or let's say in this particular photograph also, that it is a small piece of land? You don't need so many people to be working in this particular piece of land. Here again, very small piece of land, probably even one or two individuals would have been enough. This extra guy is simply not required, but he is working. Why? Because otherwise also he is not having any particular job to perform. Otherwise also he does not have any gainful employment opportunity, so he thinks it better to work here, right? So it has been mentioned here, see, surplus labor, more workers engaged than required. You might have gone to some hotels and you would have found out there are so many, some dhabas, you find that there are so many workers there. And then you feel that why the hell these many workers are required? They are simply not required because the quantum of work is much less than the number of people who are working. This is because some of them are surplus. Some of the workers are surplus. And there is simply no need of them to be there. Even if they're not there, there would be no impact on the output. So their productivity, marginal productivity, what they add to the output is zero. Even if they're not there, output is the same. Now this is an example of disguised or hidden unemployment. Why? Because on the face of it, they look like working in the fields. Have a look. They are working there in the fields. But basically, there was no requirement of them to work in the fields because they were at surplus. The field could have been plowed by 2 workers also. Here 3 or 4 women would have been sufficient. So this is disguised or hidden unemployment. And again, they would not be getting paid as a full worker. They would be getting only part payment of what they can expect when they are working somewhere else. So they are not getting the kind of payment also. So in a dhaba, when you go in a dhaba and you find so many workers, they are not getting paid a good salary because there are so many workers. The same salary would be divided among as many people. So this is again an issue with disguised hidden unemployment. You don't get paid well also, right? So this is what disguised or hidden unemployment is. With this, I believe we have discussed all the different types of unemployment. In the next session that will follow, we will be discussing the measurement of unemployment rates. That shall be discussed in the following sessions, in the upcoming sessions. And you please be also ready for the test which is going to take place in the beginning of the next week. Thank you very much.